Happy Wednesday, everybody. Chris here from Finland Mennonite Church. It's time for another Midweek Musing, this time where we slow down and remind ourselves of one truth from the previous week's sermon and the scriptures that we were in. Well, this last week we had a guest speaker, Pastor Mike Spinelli, with us, and he was walking us through Ephesians chapter 5, and he began by kind of identifying how we can act as individuals. And he didn't necessarily put them in an acronym form, but it had me thinking and had me put it in an acronym form. This acronym SAP, right? And he said that we can act self-sufficient, we can act autonomous, and we can act in pride. And if you take those first three letters, what does that make us if we're acting in these ways? It makes us SAPs. And a SAP, if you are not sure of that lingo, is another way of referring to a foolish individual, a foolish person, right? That's what a SAP is. And a SAP, in Mike's terms, are those who act self-sufficient, autonomous, and prideful, right? It just makes us fools. But he encouraged us and said, hey, as God's people, that may be the case, but when we walk together, when we choose to walk as Christ did, choosing love, that then we become transformed together. And it had me thinking, particularly about this word sap, because in addition to being a slang term to refer to somebody who's foolish or maybe gullible, it also had me thinking about tree sap. And if you've ever climbed a pine tree or picked up a branch off a pine, you get sap on your hands, and it's just really, well, it's not fun, right? Everything sticks to it. It's hard to clean off. It just makes things kind of a disaster, right? Sort of like what happens when we can act as saps. But just as Mike encouraged us to be refined by walking together, by leaning in, by loving one another, sap can be refined too to something that probably all of us find delicious. And so I have here a bottle of maple syrup, right? That wonderful thing. Maybe you have a different kind of syrup that you enjoy, right? Smothering pancakes with, putting it on waffles. Maybe there's something else you really enjoy putting your maple syrup on. Sometimes I even use it as a sweetener for my coffee, right? Because syrup is a wonderful thing. Syrup is a delicious thing. Syrup takes something like pancakes and makes them fantastic, right? Sap, you wouldn't want to put sap all over your pancakes. You wouldn't want to put sap into your coffee. You don't even want sap on your hands, right? But sap refined becomes syrup, and syrup becomes very useful, becomes very valuable, becomes something that's very tasteful. In the same way, next time you're eating pancakes for breakfast and you're pouring that syrup over it, know that we too are being kind of reformed from saps into syrup when we walk together in love, when we lean into one another. Then we refine each other to become something that's tasteful, that adds to the experience of something. Or in Mike's words, he said, we begin to choose light over darkness, right? We begin to choose wisdom over foolishness, and we begin to choose submission over selfishness. So let's finish this week out as syrup in God's hands, as syrup that will bring the light of God, the light of his kingdom to where we live, work, and play, the syrup that will walk in his wisdom in the places we live, work, and play, and the syrup that will choose submission to him and his ways where we live, work, and play. And I guarantee you, just as syrup makes pancakes that much better, so God's people living as syrup, where they live, work, and play, will do amazing things, bringing about the kingdom of God in powerful ways and leading others to know this amazing God personally. So finish this week out, blessing those around you, living for Jesus, and seeing what God does as we do. Thanks.